How to create homemade rice flour. An important component in a South Indian cooking is rice flour, also known as biyyam pindi in Telugu. What can be done with rice flour, then? This gluten-free flour is used to make prasadam, a food offering to God, such as kudumulu, undrallu, appalu, and ammini kozhukottai, as well as snacks, pindi vantalu, like murukku, jantikalu, and palakayalu. As I was preparing a sizable quantity for dishes for Ganesh Chaturthi, I took photographs of the entire process after receiving several requests for the recipe for rice flour to create snacks. Extremely easy, but requires some work. It is necessary to soak the rice for at least 1 hour. Given that it results in softer flour, I'd advise soaking the grains for 2 to 3 hours. Use any top-notch raw white rice, such as sona masuri. Make careful to shade dry the rice on cotton fabric until it is almost completely dry but still slightly damp. I typically lay a newspaper on the ground, cover it with a cotton towel, and then cover it with a thin layer of the drained rice. The leftover coarse rice rava after sifting rice flour can be further processed into smooth flour or utilized in recipes that call for rice rava, coarsely ground rice. Rice flour may be prepared in small batches at home or delivered to your local flour mill in larger amounts, greater than 1 kilogram. Typically, I make biyyam pindi with 1 kilogram of rice for Naivediyam on holidays like Ganesh Chaturthi, offering to God. Ingredients: 4 cups of rice. How to make rice flour at home method for making rice flour. Rice should be washed and soaked for 2 to 3 hours minimum. If you're pressed for time, soak it for an hour. Completely drain the water, then spread it out on a cotton cloth in a thin layer. For an hour or until it is virtually dry but still slightly damp, dry it in the shade. 1 cup of rice should be added to a mixer grinder and powdered up. This pounded rice powder should be sieved, and the leftover rice rava, which has a gritty texture, should be set away in a different bowl. On a piece of newspaper, spread out the fine rice powder and let it air dry fully. It ought to be kept in an airtight jar. You may now either use the leftover rice rava to make upma or any other recipe that asks for rice rava, or you can crush it into a fine powder. Tips: rice flour from 1 cup of rice makes 1½ cups. After grinding the rice to a fine powder, you do not need to dry it if you want to use the flour within 2 to 3 days of preparing it. Make careful to keep it chilled. The fine rice powder can be dry roasted for 5 to 7 minutes on a low heat, then cooled to room temperature. For a few weeks, keep it in an airtight container. It may be used to produce pattu, idiyappam, and murukku. I produce new batches of rice flour as needed. The rice should be soaked in water for at least 2 to 3 hours.